side, so it's a better ride than it has been.
Well, if
So
they
it's
didn't
clean.
have so much trouble underground, they would have been finished by now. But they ran into so many issues.
Hello, hello, neighbors and friends. This is Faisal Hassan, your member provincial parliament for York Southwestern, and tonight we're going to have a conversation about clean trains, and we have distinguished members of our community who have been fighting on behalf of our community for years. And welcome. You're joining us, Faisal Hassan, NDP, for my page and also Twitter and YouTube. And you will be able also tonight to include your comments as well. And if you have any questions for all of us here tonight, welcome. And thank you for joining us for this important discussion on the electrification of the Up Express and the need to bring clean, green transit to rail corridors across the province. Long-time residents of York Southwestern are familiar with the community-led effort to oppose the use of diesel trains along Union Pearson corridor. For 2 decades, my guests have been on the forefront of this fight as members of the Clean Trains Coalition. Their hard work has held previous governments accountable for their choices and demanded assurances that electrification was the ultimate goal. Earlier this month, I was honored to co-sponsor Bill 303, the Clean Trains Now Act. This bill will develop a concrete path forward by establishing a committee to make recommendations on a planned timeline and funding estimates to achieve electrification and fair integration. This committee will report directly to the Minister of Transportation and will finally start to identify the actions necessary to reach our community's goals of electrification. With that, I would like to start by introducing my guest this evening. First, we have Mary Louise Ashburn, long-time resident and recipient of the Etobicoke Historical Society's 2021 Jean Herbert Award. Mike Sullivan, former member provincial parliament for York Southwestern, my former boss here in York Southwestern, and Surrey Wemberger Lesky, owner of the historical bookstore here, Scripps Stationery on Western Road, and Mike Matters, a community leader, member of the Mount Dennis Community Association, and also Rick Cesarelli, Mount Dennis Community also Association, and we'll be also expecting shortly. Also Sherry Hurst to join us as well. So I know that Rick is also have another commitment. So first, I will welcome Rick quickly.
Thank you, Faisal. Tonight is kind of that reunion of some of the Clean Train gang, and it is it has been a number of years since we've all been together working on this. It started around the time, and Mike and Surrey and Mary Louise know this best, around the time that the city and I think it was one of the public civic action groups had put pressure on air quality. And the fact that a public health study had just that had come forward had just proven that if you lived within a certain distance of the major transit corridors, there was a high risk of respiratory disease and lung cancer. Mike, in his wisdom, translated that to Metrolinx's big move plan that was starting to come forward in about 2009, was it? And recognized that from current service of about 79 trains, diesel trains, we would be looking at over 400 trains going through York Southwestern, down either the Georgetown, as it was called then, Kitchener corridor, or the Barrie corridor. So recognizing that diesel emits a very toxic ash, and is one of the key components to the air pollution that was causing health problems in the area. People then took a look at, so what's in the corridor? And we mapped out the daycares, we mapped out the schools, we mapped out the hospitals, and we mapped out a shocking number of people who were living immediately beside where this diesel corridor would be, all of this diesel service would be coming. Moving a little bit forward from that, the Pan Am Games got announced. Metrolinx announced that it would be doing a Union Pearson, an Air Rail Express is what they first called it, Union Pearson Express train. And the coalition that was getting organized focused on that as being, let's go after this. Let's make sure that it's electric. Let's make sure that it's public transit service. And Metrolinx had been pushing this as being the premier airline type service for business class and for tourists coming into town, to connect them between the airport and the downtown Union Station, with no thought about stopping the communities in between to provide much needed transit service. So that was the focal point, the targets for electrification is the answer. I'll gladly turn this over to Mary Louise. We were talking about the first march that got people organized just as we came on. Wondering if you might pick that up.
Yes, Mary Louise Ashburn, yeah.
Well, I'm very glad to be part of this. I do remember the excitement of it, because we became a very enthusiastic group and saw no barriers other than ones that we could pass by or leap over. And we met with many officials. I remember going down to Queen's Park, and we gave speeches to different organizations. It was a time when there was a bonding took place in the community, I think. Really, there was a realization that if our future was largely to be dictated by others, no, you weren't going to be able to accept that. We wanted to have a say, and we wanted to direct it in the right direction. Now, we didn't achieve all our aims, but we did achieve an awful lot. However, I would say too that Weston paid an enormous price for this air rail link, because we were torn up, our streets were torn up, and we lost a street on John Street, and we had streets torn up, and houses were shaken, and people had problems with the dust and the dirt for a long time. And you forget this when it's all over. But we have paid our dues, and I am glad to think that maybe something is starting now to carry it to the new level, where we can say, this is the future. We have to look after electrification. It's not just a dream, it is something that is happening all over. And I'm very, very glad that we're in the process of maybe starting. This is the initial, as far as I know, but whether it is the start or the middle, we're going to see to it to the finish. I think that's the goal.
Very good. And I would also bring Mike Sullivan, who was also then the member of Parliament, and have done a lot of work also in that. And Mike.
Thank you, Faisal. I became the member of Parliament long after I started all this work. This work started in 2004,
That's right.
and I became the member of Parliament in 2011. But it was a combination of work that involved the local community in Weston, but then once other communities realized the scope that Metrolinx was proposing, this number of trains, other communities came quickly on board, and there was a coalition formed along the corridor who were interested in making sure that the trains were electric. We're still one of the only countries on the planet that runs a diesel train to its airport. I think we are the only country on the planet that runs a diesel train to its airport. which is in keeping with the current government's environmental record, I think. Let's tear up some farmland and pollute the air. The Clean Train Coalition was formed out of a group of individuals who, as Rick reminded us, had read of the dangerous nature of diesel to children, to elderly people, and to everyone. And what we got after 5 or 6 years of campaigning was a promise by the Wynne government that all the trains would be electrified, all the GO trains. And then she quickly backed down and said, no, I don't mean all the trains. I mean the trains on corridors that GO owns. But there's been no action whatsoever on electrifying anything by GO, despite that promise by Kathleen Wynne. And her minister promised that the Up Express would be electrified by 2017, which is actually 4 years ago now, and I don't recall it being electrified. Metrolinx, which I now call Metro Lies, promised that the diesel Up Express trains were convertible to electric. Well, they're not. And they've lied about that. They lied about replacing the trees in Weston that they tore down. They lied about the number of trains that were going to run when they started, because they're nowhere near the number of trains. The service is nowhere near what it was. And they lied about the fact that GO trains would be the priority. In fact, Up Express was the priority. So I've been telling other communities that watch out for Metrolinx's lies, because other communities are starting to discover, the communities around Jimmy Simpson Park, the communities around the new Ontario line are discovering what Metrolinx is really all about. Although I have left Weston, I apologize to all of you. I have been keeping track of some of the promises that Metrolinx made. And in fact, Transport Canada, at my urging, is pushing Metrolinx to fulfill its promises made in the federal environmental assessment about the installation of noise walls. There are still noise walls not installed along that corridor, and Metrolinx swore on a Bible that they had finished all that stuff in order to get their final installment of money from Transport Canada. And when Transport Canada heard from me that Metrolinx lied to them, they were pissed. So Transport Canada is still pushing. I'm still pushing to get York South Weston better access to Presto, which is Metrolinx's other big lie, that it'll be better. It's not. Because of the secret deal they signed with Shoppers Drug Mart to be the exclusive provider of all things Presto. And yet there's only 2 Shoppers Drug Marts in all of York South Weston. So how on earth does that replace the 39 resellers of TTC fare? It's just awful. There's lots of work to be done. I thank Faisal and his colleagues at Queen's Park for remembering that there are things that haven't yet been done. It's more than just clean trains.
That's right.
One of the promises, those of you who were there when the rather disappointing news that the minister didn't force clean trains on Metrolinx, but instead forced Tier 4 diesel.
Yeah.
As soon as it was commercially available, it was to be run on the Kitchener line, the then Georgetown line. And guess what? Metrolinx has them and are refusing to run them on the Kitchener line. And apparently, the Ministry of the Environment, provincially, does not have the power to force Metrolinx to live up to the commitment that the minister made back in 2009. When he approved the environmental assessment, he told Metrolinx, but you must run non-polluting Tier 4 trains as soon as you have them. Well, they have them, but they're not running them. They say it would be inconvenient. They would have to shuttle them more than they do now. And so they refused. And as I discovered, the ministry is completely powerless to force Metrolinx to do anything. So bravo to the NDP for taking this on, and I wish you good luck.
Thank you, Mike, and we'll come back to you, Mike. I'll welcome Suri, who's also been part of the Clean Train Coalition.
Sorry, I had to unmute, and I'm outside, so you'll have to forgive me for the outside noises. Yeah, it's been a really hard slog. I mean, I'm grateful that we were able to accomplish what we did actually accomplish. For the longest time, they kept, after the Pan Am Games, they started handing out little freebies and inviting us and pacifying us with little trinkets here and there on the UPX when it was still the high priced vehicle. And I'm proud to say that I actually refused to accept any of those free rides. It took me a year and a half before I even got on the train or even into the station, because I refused to do it until they lowered the fares. And when it finally got down to $5.50, I said, okay, I can accept it now. I mean, it's still a little high, but it's much better. And it's actually been, fairly convenient for a lot of people in Weston who do use it on a regular basis. But, as Mary Lou said, we still have a ways to go. But I think we should be very proud of ourselves with what we did accomplish. I remember the days when Mike and I would get into my car, especially when he had his broken foot, and we'd go around to other communities along the line, begging them to come join us and trying to explain to them, what was happening. We had meetings down in Liberty Village and at a condo along Queen Street or King Street. And we just couldn't get that traction. We couldn't convince people in 2005 and 2006 that we weren't absolutely stark raving nuts about what was coming down the tracks. And it literally was the pile driving in the junction that actually made everybody pivot and realize what was going on. And I remember going to a community sort of gathering in that sort of that little triangle where the pile drivers were, and talking to some of the neighbors down there about what we've been experiencing up in Weston and what was coming down the pike. And I was really grateful that a lot of those people really sat up and paid attention. And the people that and friends, like we've made good friends down in Roncy and in the junction and all the way along the tracks. And unfortunately, now that we're sort of at a lull, we're not as communicative with each other as before, but it was a really amazing group of people. I mean, even the people in the community that never knew each other, people that I met through this process that have become lifelong friends. And that's what I'm even more grateful for than the actual transit line, is that we've made hundreds of new friends. We've been able to connect with each other in the most bizarrest way and become, more of a community. So if anything good came out of it, it was that it did galvanize the community. I remember that meeting in February in the middle of a snowstorm where we had the meeting shut down because they only had room for 480 people and we had over 1,200 people there. And then, forcing them to find a larger venue. And again, getting our shirts, getting our signs, getting our buttons and putting up notices and talking to people. And a venue that had 2,500 seats was also almost shut down because we galvanized the whole community. And, so it was very empowering. It was a wonderful moment in Weston's history. And, we'll have to make sure that it is archived and so that, future generations will know that what this generation did on their behalf. So thank you for putting this together.
Absolutely, and that's also still the work has to continue, and we have to still fight for the importance of the health of our community. And I know that also we've gained 2 stops, a Western stop and also a Bloor. I will bring Mike Matos, who is also a historian and also a leader in Mount Dennis community.
Thank you, Faisal. This last couple of weeks, we've heard about the residential schools, and we had the really strange phenomenon that the Chinese ambassador was saying how terribly we treated the indigenous people. And that reminded me that it was Chinese workers who built the railroads and opened the West. And if you live on the boundary of Weston and Mount Dennis, you know where the St. John Cemetery is. And if you go in there, you'll find the grave of John Taylor Denison III. John Taylor Denison called the people in Ottawa scoundrels and rogues who were stealing the land from the settlers. The settlers they were stealing the land from, not, basically the railroads were taking the land away from the people who had settled there already. And oh yeah, by the way, the Métis people, they were losing the land too. And we have a soldier from Toronto saying they're scoundrels and rogues. I don't think it got any better, Mike. I think we got the same guys there. So we're 150 years down the road and we're dealing with the same guys. I did a project during Clean Train where I was trying to find out how bad it was going to be when we added, 400 more trains. So I asked Metrolinx for the data, and they gave me a hard time, but finally they gave me the data, printed two-sided on paper for me to do my statistical analysis on. Well, I managed to get it all digitized, and then I suddenly found out that the data for the smog days was not included. The data for the smog days had been redacted. And they said, oh, yes, that's statistical analysis. You take the anomalies and you take them out of your data set so you can figure out what your mean and your averages are. The days people die from smog were not included in the data analysis of how bad the smog was. And we were going to add 400 trains to it. And this was the official data that Metrolinx was using to say it was safe to run their trains. So, I can only say that these people have been lying very effectively for 150 years. If it runs on steel rails, you better make sure you got your fingers and toes there, because they'll cut them off. It has been a nightmare dealing with the railroads. Metrolinx has been a little bit better. Mike, you may not like this, but when the Liberals finally got in power and the NDP got in power, they made it miserable for the railroads and for Metrolinx for a little while. But unfortunately, those guys pulled their heads back into their shells and hibernated for a few years. And now they've got another conservative government backing them up. And, we're back to where we were back in 1876. It's, the railroads are just doing what they want. Whether it's provincial government or not, the land associated with the railroads is being treated as a profit opportunity by landowners and not as a service for the people. And
Well,
that's what Denison said, back in 1876.
Well, thank you. And those of you folks, neighbors and friends who are just tuning in, that are joining us, you're joining tonight, you're a member provincial parliament and also leaders of the Clean Train Coalition in our community who have also fought hard for clean trains and electrification in our community. I also co-sponsored a bill to electrify, integrate, and increase service capacity of Up Express. I sponsored this bill, Bill 303, with my colleagues from Parkdale High Park, Botila Caprocci, and also Tom Rakosovich, Humber River Black Creek, and Merritt Stiles from Devonport. And we introduced this bill, and the aims to electrify and improve access to Union Pearson Express, Up Express. If passed, the Clean Trains Now Act would establish a committee to review the Up Express transportation system between downtown Toronto and Pearson Airport, and make recommendations with regards to a plan, timeline, and funding estimates to achieve certain goals, including the electrification of Up Express line, full fare integration so that passengers on the Up Express can travel seamlessly across public transit routes in Toronto, and an increase in service capacity. I applaud the advocacy of the Clean Train Coalition, which has its roots in York South-Weston and in particularly here in Weston and Mount Dennis. The Liberals campaigned, as Mike Sullivan said, on electrification of the Up Express and didn't deliver. The diesel trains running through our community is the Liberals' legacy and the Conservatives' shame in not making it right. We need full fare integration and public consultation so that we can repair the damage of these governments. Electrification will reduce greenhouse gas emissions and reduce noise levels near above ground rail lines while reducing the negative health impacts of diesel exhaust, which is considered a carcinogen. The bill will require the minister to table the committee's report in the Legislative Assembly and inform the Assembly of the government's responses. Let us get it right, folks. So I know, Mike, you have said this Metrolink has been lying, and they have been lying continuously. We need better government that can actually address it. And if this bill is actually passes and this government works with us, we can actually electrify it quickly and right away.
Thanks, Faisal. Metrolinx has been the stooge of whatever government is in place. When Go Transit didn't want to continue with building what was then called Blue 22, the government took it away from Go and gave it to Metrolinx and said, here, you do it. And Metrolinx said, yes, sir. How much, sir? 3 bags full, sir. Metrolinx has been doing the government's bidding, but the government bidding included electrification. And apparently, Kathleen Wynne didn't really mean it. She said electrification because at that time, there were a number of lawn signs sprinkled throughout the ridings along the corridor suggesting that we needed clean trains now. And the Liberals didn't want those lawn signs to affect their majority or their chance at a majority. So they promised faithfully a electrification of all of Go Transit, and it never happened. And we are, I think, the reason the Up Express wasn't electrified was because they bought diesel trains, and there's no market for them. So they have these diesel trains that they have to use till they're worn out, and that may take 20 years. So we may be another 10 years or 15 years of this particular format continuing. In addition, Go has not issued an order for any any electric locomotives. Go Metrolinx stalled for several years by saying, let's study hydrogen. Mm-hmm. And there is no hydrogen system in the world yet. There is one train, I think, in somewhere in Europe that is experimenting with it, but it's a very expensive system. It's a very energy inefficient system because it takes a lot of energy to convert water to hydrogen from electricity. If you're going to use electricity, you might as well use it to drive the vehicles in the first place. And it's not like we're traveling across the prairies where there isn't a whole lot of electricity. This is Ontario. We have lots. It's not an issue. There will be electricity available to run trains, to run cars, and any government in power should know that and should be working to make sure that Metrolinx fulfills the promise made in 2014 that there would be electric trains everywhere. So it's now 7 years later. I don't think there's been a single RFP or contract signed with any provider for electric trains. Metrolinx has managed to stall this thing as long as they can, and they may have decided that as they are now contracting out the construction of all this stuff, and they've taken the word electric trains out of that contract. So who knows whether Metrolinx intends to let SNC-Lavalin, whoever gets the contract, to build this thing without electrification, because it'll be cheaper for them to run it that way. I think you're right. We have to keep the pressure on, and we have to keep the pressure on not just because it's the right thing to do, but because it's for the health of us and our kids. That's what the Green Train Coalition was really focused on, was this is the healthy way. It's not just an environmental thing, it's a health thing. And the Toronto medical officer of health came to our rally actually and spoke at our rally because he was so concerned about the health. When someone asked him, but isn't Tier 4 better? He said, any increase in pollutants is bad. Any increase whatsoever. We're already at a breaking point. So let's not do it any longer. Let's get on with the job and make it electric like most of the rest of the world.
Very good. Thank you. Rick? Yeah, Rick Cesarelli. Yeah. Yeah.
Apologies. I was fumbling with the mute button. I recall a session that a number of us were at around the table with the former president and CEO of Metrolinx and their stakeholder and relations vice president. Neither of them are there any longer. And we talked about the Air Rail Link. We talked about the Union Pearson Express. And Mr. McQuigg was very adamant that this would be an exceptional service. It was going to deliver airline quality. You'd be in seats the same as an airliner. You'd have luggage compartments above. And he's going through this presentation to 15, 20 people representing the community and the airline workers, airport area workers. What we got to was basically a call for him to understand that our interest was not in a premium class service, it was in a transit service. People had to get to work at the airport. People along the line needed access to a public transit system. This was a critical point, I think, in terms of getting the message to the CEO that you got to start adding some stops, and you've got to, in terms of where the train is running, and you've got to start thinking about how much it's costing because you've priced it out of public transit. I think the bill that Faisal and his colleagues are bringing forward will put pressure to make sure that Metrolinx does recognize Up Express as the priority for electrification and get it done. They've stalled much too long. As Mike Sullivan reminded us, 2017 was their deadline.
Yeah.
And integrating it with public transit across Toronto, it shouldn't cost to transfer.
No.
It should be one system, one fare.
Yes, Mary Louise. Yeah, I know that we have benefited in terms of stop here in Weston and also Bloor, but also still there was an issue about the pricing, but also making sure that it is the same amount of transferring from TTC to Up Express will be ideal thing to also increase the capacity of the Up Express and vice versa. I guess I will bring Mike Matos then. I think Mary Louise cannot hear.
For
Yeah,
me to say? Oh,
yeah, go
yes.
ahead. Yeah.
Go ahead. Yes. Well, I'm thinking, yeah, absolutely. If we're going to have a good system, it has to be integrated. And you have to be able, with the same money that you have paid at the beginning of the ride, you should carry through the entire system. And I think that the payments should be integrated. I think the service should be integrated. And there shouldn't be, in many respects, separate systems, which is what they're trying to run at this present time. I think that they are missing an opportunity to unify and to simplify our transportation, and in the long run, it will make it less costly. I can only conclude, if you do that, it will be greater use and greater satisfaction. And that is important. People have to get to work feeling in a good humor, and they have to be able to rely on their services. And so I would say, but you do know that we have to look to the future. And this is they had promised, I know, Mike, that they did. And they said, well, we're going to build in just the way they did the viaduct, the St. Edward's Viaduct, by putting in a lower level that actually was used by the subway trains, saved millions and millions of dollars in the long run, although it wasn't used for many, many years. But they said, no, when we're setting this up, we will have it so that it will be a seamless move into electricity. Now, I don't know, maybe I'm exaggerating, but that's what I understood. They said, we have to just go through with this right now, but we're planning for the future, and we will have it so that it's an easy transition and will be better in the long run, and we'll have all our plans in place and everything. Have they done that, right? Mike, do you have any idea at all, or do you have any, Faisal, any idea that they have built into what they have already done, the makings of the electrical system, to the installations, the basic installations, so that things don't have to be all torn up and started from fresh? That's what they said to us. I'm quite sure that was one of the things that they said, don't worry, we've got the future in mind, and we will do this, and it will not be done with nearly the difficulty as if we were starting off from scratch. This is an interim period. That was one of the things that I have in my memory. I hope I'm right, but in any case, they haven't done it, I don't think, because this is the future. And you cannot get ahead unless you are part of the mainstream and moving forward. So I would say that this is something that is very important. We will have to start really from ground zero in many respects to tell people that this is what the future is, and it should be planned for now. It may not be a year or two, maybe more, but we are patient people, and we have to plan for the future, and the future is electric.
Yeah.
Very good. Yes, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I remember we were sitting, I don't know how many of us were there, but sitting with some of the crew from the southern communities at the Lithuanian house at Bloor and Dundas. And we were at a presentation with the consultants, and we very, very specifically asked them why this is taking so long, why electrification is just like, it's not happening. And the consultants literally said, it's all political will. If the politicians told us tomorrow to electrify, it would be done, but it was all political will. And and we can keep spinning and spinning and spinning, but until the politicians understand that this is the be all and end all, I don't see it actually coming to fruition. I mean, they say that they're working on it, they send out the flyers, they send out the information, because we just got one a couple of weeks ago on electrification. But until we start seeing them putting up the catenaries, they've told us that they're taking out more trees to make room. I mean, I thought that they had already taken out all the trees to make room. I know that they are doing some work at John Street, because they blocked off an area to do some work, and they've brought in some equipment, but there hasn't been any further information given on what they're actually doing when we can expect electrification, and it feels like wheels spinning in some regards.
Absolutely.
But again, it's all political will, and it's I don't think we need to continuously try to embarrass the governing government into action. They should want to do it because it's better for the community. It's better for everybody. It's better for the environment. I mean, they talk about the environment, but then they don't really do anything for the environment. And that's the frustrating part.
Absolutely, and also it's about the health as well. But I'll tell you, sorry, an NDP government will deliver, and we'll make it electrifications, and our bill exactly asks that, and that's what we are tabling, and that's what we have tabled, and we'll continue to fight for it. I will bring Mike Matters quickly.
Okay.
We can't hear you, Mike. You are muted. Unmute yourself first.
Try again. Apparently double clicked. Leave me to clean up the mess, huh? There is a political problem in Ontario with electricity. We have groups that don't want to store nuclear waste. We have groups that don't want nuclear reactors in their back pocket. We have groups that want to shut down the natural gas. We have people that want natural gas fired units. And for some reason, we have resistance to buying power from Quebec. It's like there's a NIMBY for every source of electricity. And then we say, oh, we're going to put in electric cars and we need to increase our grid for that. And we want to put electric trains and increase the grid. And oh, we want everyone to have a heat pump instead of having a propane or natural gas running their furnace. So we need to put in some, and you do the numbers and it is a mess. Meanwhile, we've got how many years since a major generating facility came on stream in Ontario, as we're trying to move away from fossil fuels and go electric? And how many years has it been since somebody actually built a major energy source? And I'm really concerned that what is really driving all of this is that you and I may not care if the price per kilowatt hour of our electricity goes up by a nickel, because we're paying about 20 cents for electricity and a nickel in that would disappear. But the commercial users are not paying 20 cents a kilowatt hour. They are buying it for a lot less than that. And a nickel is a big deal if you're only paying a dime. So if you're an automobile plant, or if you're in manufacturing, if you're a hotel, you care about what you're paying for electricity. And I suspect that the voice in the room right now that's driving everything is the voice of the major consumers of electricity. And until we make it obvious that their interests are being put ahead of ours, we will not move any. We will not move. I think we have to go forward saying, who is driving the price of electricity? Like, why are we not just saying, yep, we're going to have to pay a nickel, we're going to build a huge new reactor, and that's going to give us all our power, and that will allow us to transition to get our electric cars going. And yep, by the 20 years from now, when the reactors shut down, we'll have a better way to take care of it. But right now, we don't have a way to get rid of fossil fuel and provide the electricity. So what are we going to do? It seems to me that talking about clean train is an opportunity for us to go forward and say what is going on with the electric system. Because we heard excuses for the last 20 years, oh, we don't have the capacity for electric trains, right? But they promised us electric trains 20 years ago, so you would think by now somebody would have found the power for the electric trains, but they haven't. And I can only say my thought, again, we've got to explain why the power is not being provided. And that is part of whose interest is it to keep electricity prices low. And it's not in our best interests.
Well, thank you. I think Mike raised his hand a minute ago. Wanted to say something about, was it Rick? Okay, go ahead, Rick, quickly. And then Mike, yeah.
I just wanted to thank you for inviting me to the town hall. And also a bit of a counterpoint to Mike Maddow's. Calgary invested in wind power for the C1 train back in 2001. They estimated how much electricity it would need, and then they invested in the wind industry. So I think it's possible
Yep.
to come up with creative and renewable energy solutions and not just rely on a replacement of a nuclear plant or cranking up the natural gas powered generating capacity that's been sitting fallow
Quick,
since people
quick,
realized the impact of methane.
quick rebuttal on that. Who canceled the wind projects in Ontario?
That's another debate. But Rick, were you finished or you continuing?
Yes, I'm
Yeah,
done. Thank
I'm
you.
done. Yeah,
Thanks very much.
thank you. No, thank you for joining us. I know you have another commitment tonight, another event, but we really appreciate Rick for joining us tonight. Rick has been working very hard in our community. He really did a lot and put the community first and continues to do every day on behalf of decent and hardworking member of our community. Mike Sullivan?
Thanks again, Faisal. I don't think electricity supply is the issue. It is an issue in Ontario. It's not the issue for the reason that they haven't electrified the trains. It's just too easy to use diesel, and that's what they're doing. So don't let's not go down that rabbit hole again and suggest that we don't have enough electricity to electrify trains. The electricity required is a mere drop in the bucket of the electrical supply of the province of Ontario. When we were fighting the glass plant here in Stratford, we understood that it would produce as much greenhouse gases by burning natural gas as the entire city of Stratford did, and then some. It would more than double the city of Stratford's. When I did the math, I discovered that if they wanted to heat their glass refractors with electricity, they had to do it in Quebec, because in Quebec, industrial prices are 3.73 cents per kilowatt hour. And that is equivalent to the natural gas prices here in Ontario. But as long as we're paying 20 cents a kilowatt hour for our electricity, people are going to choose natural gas. That's just how it is. And the price of natural gas isn't going up. So the issue isn't whether or not we have enough electricity. There are issues about the sources of electricity, whether or not it's coming from nuclear. The plan is to bury the nuclear waste underground about 30 kilometers north of where I'm living now for 500,000 years. And that's just, right next to Lake Huron. It's really smart to put 500,000 year danger stuff underground next to Lake Huron, but that's what this government is now proposing to do. Or actually, not the government; it's the Nuclear Waste Management Organization. Burning natural gas is not a good way to generate electricity when there are other ways to do it. When Quebec has more power than it knows what to do with. So let's not find the red herring of whether or not we electrify based on the price of electricity. We electrify because we need to do it, because it's good for the health and well-being of the people who live near the corridor. We electrify because we have to stop burning fossil fuels, period, end of story. Diesel trains are very dangerously polluting, and we need to stop using them. We need to stop having diesel trucks. We need to stop having diesel cars. But let's do one thing at a time. And with regards to the integration of fares, Faisal, I'm glad your bill includes that. Metrolinx has deliberately, and with Doug Ford's acquiescence, kept the price of the Up Express higher than Go Transit. It removed the integration that was there between Go Transit and Up Express and the TTC, and left it only for the TTC, left it only for Go Transit. And for the folks in Weston, watch out. Metrolinx has decided not to build a fourth platform. They are building a fourth platform in Mount Dennis. My guess is that Mount Dennis could be the beneficiary of the Up Express, and Weston would lose it. Metrolinx keeps saying, no, we would never do that, but they've done stupider things in the past. So I'm and by the way, Mike and company, I was glad to see Mount Dennis on the National 2 nights ago. It was quite pleasant. Um, the whole point of integration is because this is part of our transit system. David Collinette said to me in 2004 that the reason this was to be an exclusive airport service and not stop in neighborhoods and not serve the local people is because the clientele that they were appealing to use this train didn't want to rub shoulders with ordinary Torontonians going to work. That's what David Collinette said to me. Now, it's he and Mike Harris that are responsible for there being an Up and Express in the first place. Mike Harris, because he canceled the Eglinton subway.
Yep.
And David Collinette, because when City of Toronto said, give us money to build our own Eglinton subway, he said, I won't do that, but I will build you an airport rail link. Because I liked the one at Heathrow. I really enjoyed that. And it was a first class service and I really wanted that. So that's what we got. Let's make it into something. We've already made it into something very useful for the city of Weston, for the town of Weston. The town of Weston has, as a direct result of having rapid transit to downtown, has climbed out of some indicators in the city that showed it to be near the bottom of the totem pole, and it has moved as a result of that. Mount Dennis will do the same when the Eglinton LRT opens. So good transit that is affordable, that is connecting local communities to the rest of the city, is a good thing for local communities. And so to integrate the fares is a very important and excellent objective. And thank you, Faisal, for putting that forward. And thanks for inviting me. I really appreciated the chance to see all my old friends again.
Although, thank you, Mike. You have done so much in this community, and we do appreciate that as well. I know that, Mike, it's very important to bring people to the airport in different directions. If they are now, the Eglinton Crosstown is doing east-west, well, I think we should maintain north-south-north. And if they're going to bring people into a Finch line as well, so that argument and that need for more people to actually go directly pass into Mount Dennis, and also those who are coming east-west and also north-south and also coming Finch to the airport makes sense. I think that should be something we should maintain it and continue to serve our community. Definitely, we will be fighting for that to make sure the gains we gained continues here in Weston in our community. I know we've got about 8 minutes for basically for your concluding remarks. Maybe I will start with Mary Louise Ashburn.
Yes, I want people to think in terms of a win-win situation. If one goes ahead, that doesn't mean the others have to drop back. And we have to think in terms of integrating a large system to everybody's benefit. Mount Dennis is getting an extra platform, Mike says, as far as their station is concerned. I don't think there should be any consideration given to eliminating the station in Weston. This is absolutely vital. The number of people that take that train is really absolutely important and vital for the health of our general area. And that would be a grave mistake to say no Weston Station. Those people would have to seek other places to join the transportation system. And they really don't have any extra space down in Mount Dennis to accommodate the number of people who would be gathering in order to take the transportation. In Weston, people walk to the station. Now, I would say, too, about the number of transportation entrances to the airport. They have enormous numbers of people that work at that airport, and they're all most of them are forced. If they improved the numbers of entrances via good transportation, this would be an enormous advantage to our general atmosphere, to the environment. Those people would be, anybody with their right mind would be glad to take good transportation, but nobody is going to take bad transportation. They will prefer to make their own way there and drive. So that there is overall, I think, a great benefit to be gained by our overall area. It isn't just, I'm not speaking just for Weston. There's a huge area that is served by different links. And these links all have to be joined, and the aim has to be for a general plan to improve not only the environment, but also access to the downtown and access to the airport, because those are the two big hubs. And I think that should extend up to Kitchener and the outside lines coming in. They should all be part of this, but it should not be thought of it as some will win, some will lose.
Right.
Everybody can win if it's done properly. And I do believe that electrification is the basic solution to transportation as far as what call it fuel or whatever drives the plane to the transportation, but a unified electrified system throughout our area could only be a win-win for every single aspect of our lifestyle.
Thank you. Thank you. Absolutely. It makes sense. And we know that the plan and the transit systems is now east-west, and those populations are concentrated into north-south direction. And that's very important to maintain so that folks in those north and south corridor could come to the airport. So there's a huge argument to maintain and expand it further into other northern part of the city to also connect to the airport as well. So Mike Matos, quickly, I know we are coming to an end, for your concluding remarks.
Well, I hope you can do it. I really do. I've spent a lot of the last 10 years talking to a lot of politicians, and a lot of them were conservative politicians. Mainly municipal, I must admit, but some of them were MPs or MPPs. And I really feel that they only listen to the financial argument. You've got to go in there and you've got to say, this is the cheapest way to do it, so this is the way you're going to do it. And if you go in with numbers, you get a lot more attention. If you go in and say it's clean, they laugh at you. You really have to have dollars and cents arguments to win.
Well, thank you, Mike. I think it's about also a priority, about government should be the priority of the community, and our health is most important part of it. Suri?
Sorry, I had to unmute. Just building on what everybody has said, you know, there's a huge concern with regards to what Mike said about losing the station, from the aspect of all the development that is coming into Weston. And the development came to Weston because of the UPX.
That's right.
And because of the transit line, and because, you know, the connection to the LRT in Eglinton. 22 John Street has a huge number of airport workers living there. I see them with their carry-on walking to and fro to the UPX in their uniforms on a regular basis. Not so much right now in the last year because of COVID, but I do know that there are a number of airport workers who live in that building. We have a new building coming in on Wilby. It's being built right now, Options for Homes. Those people chose to live there because of proximity to transit. We have two other very large developments coming in, just a little north of that and a little south of that. And then again, there's going to be another development north of Lawrence Avenue, where our store is, in the coming years. So just from the development standpoint, you know, the developers are banking on transit. And if Metrolinx or the government of the day tries to take that transit away, those developers are going to be super, super pissed, because they've spent millions and millions of dollars just buying the land, just getting it ready, just doing their plans. And to have the one, you know, key ingredient taken away from them is going to be very detrimental to whoever is in government at the time.
Absolutely, and we won't allow that to happen because it's working. It should continue to work. So as Mary Louise said, it's a win-win. You bring new projects, continue to work on that, but don't take what's already there.
Yeah.
Mike, I think we'll give the last concluding remarks here.
That means I need to turn on my microphone. Thanks again for inviting me. Thanks to all you for continuing the what started in 2004. So it's been 17 years since that we've been working on this project. And although I'm in Stratford, I would be more than willing to continue to help with whatever projects you guys are doing. I'm helping community groups all over the province on various things, and more than willing to help the folks in New York Southwestern continue the fight to make electrical trains.
You're still fearless leader, Mike. That never went away.
Oh, darn.
Your name is still on the book.
Yeah.
Well, we do appreciate Mike, and we will be also relying on your expertise.
Oh, lovely.
Go electric now. Yeah.
That's the clean train.
No
unfortunately, my other our Western Community Coalition T-shirts have gone AWOL. I know that they're around, but
well, thank you.
Buttons. We still have buttons.
Buttons,
I love Weston.
Well, thank you for taking part in this important discussion. As you have heard this evening, this has been a long, hard-fought battle. I am so thankful for the hard work and leadership displayed by my guests tonight and countless community members to oppose the imposition of diesel trains in our community. My guests were tonight Mary Louise Ashbourne, longtime resident and recipient of the Etobicoke Historical Society's 2021 Jean Herbert Award, and Mike Sullivan, a former member of Parliament for York Southwestern and my former boss, and Suri Wensberg-Lusky, owner of Historical Book here in Weston, Scripps Stationery on Weston Road, and Rick Cesarelli, also a long-time resident of York Southwestern, Mount Dennis and Weston, and also a member of the Mount Dennis Community Association, and also Mike Matos, also a historian and member of the Mount Dennis Community Association. Electrification would reduce greenhouse gas emissions and reduce noise levels near above ground railway lines, while reducing negative health impacts of diesel exhaust, which is considered a carcinogen. The benefit of electrification, folks, and fair integration are clear. And with Bill 303, the government has an opportunity to reverse the past failures that have resulted in diesel trains continuing to run through our community. It is time to finally deliver on promise of electrifications. Those of you who are joining us tonight through Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, thank you. And until then, folks, goodbye and thank you to you all. Bye.
Thanks, Faisal.
Bye.
Bye, all.